The fluorescent lights of the Chicago Public Library hummed like restless insects above my head, casting sharp-edged shadows across the returns desk where I had been cataloging books for hours. Outside, October's darkness pressed hard against the windows while the wind howled, rattling the building's old bones. At 27, I had grown used to these late nights alone among the shelves, solitude that felt safer than the world beyond those walls. Then my phone buzzed. Maya, my best friend since high school. Her voice broke as she said, "It's my mom. There's been an accident. She might not make it through the night." The stack of romance novels in my hands suddenly felt meaningless. I needed to get to the hospital. But the streets weren't safe, and the buses had already stopped running. I had no cab fare. No plan. Only an urgent need to be there. As I hurried through the dark streets of the North Side, two men began following me. When I glanced back, their shadows mirrored my every step. My chest tightened. Panic clawed at me, sharp and breathless. My phone slipped from my hand. My knees gave out, and I collapsed. Then suddenly, strong arms lifted me from the pavement, carrying me out of harm's way. Eyes like a storm met mine with an intensity I couldn't name. "You're safe now," he said, his voice low and steady. "But not everyone out here is what they seem." And just like that, my quiet life of books, late nights, and solitude was over. Someone was watching me. Someone powerful, and I had no idea why. I clutched my phone tightly, my heart pounding so hard it felt as though it might break free from my chest, the rush of fear drowning out every other thought. Maya's trembling voice on the other end told me the situation was far worse than I could have imagined. "Maya, what happened? How's your mom?" I asked, my voice low and tight under the weight of panic that hadn't yet faded. She drew in a shaky breath, trying to steady herself, but the quiver in her words betrayed her. I don't know what to do. The doctor said she might not make it through the night. It was an accident on the Eisenhower. Another car was speeding and hit the passenger side. They had to use the jaws of life to get her out. And now the doctors are worried about internal bleeding and possible brain injury. I can't handle this alone. "Hannah, can you come?" A chill ran down my spine with every detail she spoke. Maya's mother had always been like a second mother to me, especially during those last painful months when my own mom was battling illness and debt. I reached for my bag, already preparing to leave, my mind racing through logistics buses, timing, routes, knowing the only line that passed my neighborhood would stop running after 10. And a taxi was out of the question since I didn't have $1 to spare. "Maya, don't worry. I'll be there. Just keep your phone on and stay where you are," I said, trying to sound calm, though my hands were shaking. She sobbed softly, unable to reply, just listening. I glanced toward the library's windows, the streets outside empty beneath the flickering yellow glow of streetlights, unease stacking atop worry. In just a few minutes I'd have to leave, to face the city's darkness, and whatever danger waited out there after hours. My pulse raced. My mind spun with every possible scenario. But the need to be there for Maya and her mother eclipsed everything else. I gathered the books from the desk, the harsh fluorescent light washing over my face, and told myself that no obstacle, no fear, no lack of transport would stop me from reaching that hospital. The panic I'd felt earlier in the library now seemed only a prelude to the long night ahead. Yet the thought that Maya's mother might not survive if I delayed made my breath hitch and my steps quicken. My hand gripping the strap of my bag, I redialed Maya to make sure we stayed connected, each step echoing down the deserted sidewalk. A mix of anxiety, fear, and duty urging me forward, knowing that every second mattered. Chicago at night, once familiar, quiet, almost comforting during my late shifts, now felt foreign and menacing, its darkness swallowing every familiar shape. Still, I told myself I wouldn't abandon Maya in her moment of life and death. That promise alone burned brighter than fear, leaving me with only one path to reach the hospital as fast as I could, no matter what dangers waited ahead. I pulled my hand away from the library door handle, my heart still racing and my mind spinning with 100 worst-case scenarios, eyes scanning the dark streets that I had never really noticed before. The flickering yellow glow from the old streetlights reflected off the wet pavement, each puddle mirroring strange silhouettes that made me feel as if dozens of unseen eyes were watching. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. But my worry for Maya's mother overwhelmed every other thought. I had to go outside. I had to get to the hospital immediately. Yet walking through the night without buses, without money for a taxi, tightened my chest with fear. I rushed into the storage room, my hands trembling as I stuffed my purse and thin jacket onto my body, the layers of fabric feeling woefully insufficient against the October chill. I tried to calculate the distance from North Side to Northwestern Memorial, estimating the walking time and hoping I might find some means of transportation along the way. The small wallet in my bag held only a few bills, not nearly enough for a citywide taxi ride. Yet I knew there was no other choice. I put on my jacket, gripped my bag tightly, redialed Maya to make sure she was still all right, my voice shaking as I said, "I'm heading out. Just keep your phone on and stay there. I'll be there soon." She sobbed once more but said nothing, just silence, and I could hear the panic in every breath she took. I opened the door and stepped out, the cold wind lashing my face, making me shiver, each step on the soaked sidewalk heightening a sense of fragility and vulnerability. My eyes swept along the empty streets, closed shops, dusty windows, and rusted shutters adding to the eeriness. Shadows stretching in vague shapes, prompting me to glance over my shoulder repeatedly. My heart still raced. My breathing was ragged, but thoughts of Maya's mother pushed me forward, each step heavy yet impossible to stop. I tried to tell myself I had to be strong, to keep going, despite the anxiety and fear that seemed to encircle me. I checked my bag again, confirming my phone was still in my hand, my wallet intact, my jacket zipped tight, all the small things that had become a source of mental steadiness. Each step, each echo of my feet on the damp pavement, each distant figure passing by heightened my tension. Yet I could not hesitate. I drew a deep breath, closing my eyes for a moment to focus, telling myself that no danger on the street could prevent me from reaching my best friend in this life and death moment. In my mind, I saw Maya trembling, clutching her phone, waiting for me, and the urge to protect her replaced my panic with determination. I stepped out of the familiar neighborhood, the flickering yellow light spilling over the wet street, knowing that tonight every step would be a challenge. Every corner might conceal danger, but I had no choice but to keep moving, letting fear and worry swirl around me, thinking only of whether Maya's mother might live or die. And I would not stop, would not turn back, but stepped faster, each footfall echoing the rapid beat of my heart, heading toward the hospital. Knowing that every second counted, and I had to reach my best friend before it was too late, I quickened my pace along the empty streets of the North Side, each step echoing in the hollow silence, the soft patter of rain falling from the bare branches above, blending into the rhythm of my rising fear. The flickering yellow light from the old street lamps was just enough to cast my shadow across the wet pavement, but not enough to drive away the darkness that pressed in from every side. Then I realized there were two figures moving behind me, keeping their distance yet matching my every step. When I changed my speed, they did too. When I crossed the street, they followed. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it might break through my ribs, each beat hammering in my chest with terrifying force. My breath came fast and shallow, impossible to steady. I tried to focus on getting to the hospital, to keep walking, to think clearly, but fear rose inside me like a wave dragging me under. The awareness of being followed made my chest tighten and my stomach clench. My body trembled, and the panic attacks I thought I had long learned to control came roaring back. I tried to inhale deeply, to close my eyes for a moment, and center myself, but the air around me felt thick, heavy, suffocating, and all I could do was keep moving. When my phone vibrated in my pocket, I startled so violently that my hands shook as I pulled it out, the glow of the screen reflecting off my pale face. Maya had sent several messages, but I couldn't read them. My eyes kept darting around, searching the shadows for movement. A chill ran down my spine. My whole body tensed. I could hear the sound of their footsteps on the sidewalk, slow, deliberate, heavy, and I knew this was no coincidence. They were following me on purpose. I began to run, my steps clumsy on the slick pavement, water splashing up from puddles and freezing my feet through my shoes. My heart felt ready to explode. My shoulders slumped. My vision blurred. My head spun. I tried to dial emergency services, but my wet, trembling fingers made the numbers blur together. Panic flooded me. My breathing came in sharp gasps. My legs weakened beneath me, and I knew I was about to collapse. The two men behind me were closer now, their shadows stretching long under the flickering streetlights. And in the hand of one I saw something metallic glint. Every alarm in my head went off at once. Every instinct, every safety lesson I'd ever learned, screamed at me, but I was helpless. My foot slipped. My phone clattered onto the wet sidewalk, water soaking into my jacket, the cold seeping through to my skin. The panic attack reached its breaking point. My chest seized. My legs trembled. My vision blurred until the lights became streaks. The sounds around me distorted, the echo of their footsteps filling the world. I couldn't run faster. I couldn't think. Fear consumed everything, each heartbeat stabbing like a knife, each breath a desperate struggle through the tightness in my throat. I collapsed, my head striking the cold pavement, my hands shaking as I tried to push myself up, utterly powerless. And then, in the darkest instant, a pair of strong arms wrapped around me, lifting me from the ground. My body trembled, but those arms held me steady. A low, steady voice spoke near my ear, his gaze fixed on me with an intensity I couldn't name. "You're safe now. For the moment, you're safe. But not everyone out here is what they seem." The mingled shock and relief of being pulled into safety left my body weak, my breath uneven but slowly steadying, my heart still racing as the panic began to fade. In his eyes, I saw something I couldn't define: power, certainty, danger, something strong enough to make the two men behind us freeze, confused and hesitant. And in that moment, I knew the quiet life I had once led, the long nights surrounded by books, the solitude that had always felt safe, was over. Someone had taken notice of me, someone powerful, and I had no idea why. But in the uneasy mix of fear and curiosity rising within me, I sensed that from this night forward, my world would never be the same. The drizzle still fell softly over the north side, soaking through my coat and matting my hair against my forehead. But the cold no longer mattered. It had been replaced by the strange relief of being held firmly in a pair of strong arms that lifted me from the pavement. For the first time, I saw the man before me. He was tall, his presence commanding even in the dim rain, his dark coat damp, his hair tousled, yet neat, his face sharply defined, and his eyes gray as a storm about to break, held a force that was both fierce and protective, the kind of gaze that made it feel as if the whole city would yield before him. He said little, only guided me gently into the passenger seat of a sleek car parked along the curb. The window was cracked just enough for me to breathe in the cool, rain-scented air, the first breath that felt safe in what seemed like hours. My heart still pounded from the panic, my whole body trembling, my coat and hair dripping with water, the chill seeping deep but doing nothing to quiet the tension within me. He closed the door, leaned closer, and in a low, steady voice that cut through the rain and city noise, he said, "You're safe now. For the moment, you're safe. But you must understand, not everyone out there is what they appear to be." His words were both comfort and warning, grounding and unnerving at once. I realized he hadn't just saved me from the men who followed me. He had seen everything, every movement, every threat, as if danger were something he was used to watching from the shadows. My hands still trembled, my body not yet recovered from the panic attack. But being near him steadied my breath little by little. He moved without haste, scanning every street, every figure, every passing car, his eyes missing nothing. It was clear he was someone accustomed to risk, someone who had learned to control chaos by instinct and that realization sent both safety and fear coursing through me. I wanted to ask who he was, why he had saved me, but my voice came out hoarse, tears spilling down my cheeks in a blur of confusion and exhaustion. He looked at me with that quiet authority of someone who didn't need to raise his voice to be understood, nodding once, as if to tell me not to worry yet, that everything would unfold in time. When his hand came to rest gently but firmly on my shoulder, I felt a strange calm settle over me, a sense of being protected so completely that for the first time since my mother's death and the years of living alone that followed, I felt truly safe. The car began to move, the sound of rain tapping on the glass, the streetlights flickering past in streaks of gold and silver. My breathing steadied, my heartbeat slowed. I looked around and noticed the car, a black sedan, luxurious and immaculate inside, the leather interior gleaming even under the dim light. Everything was arranged with precision, not a single thing out of place. This was his world, one of order and control, and I could feel the weight of it in every detail. Fear mingled with curiosity. Finally, I found my voice, trembling but clear enough to ask, Who are you? Why did you help me?" He turned toward me slightly, his gaze still sharp but softer than before, and in that same deep, measured tone, he said, "My name is Dante Romano. The man who followed you wasn't there by chance, and he isn't someone you could have dealt with on your own. I just happened to reach you before things got worse." The sound of his name lingered in the air, and something about it shifted the world around me. The streets I had known all my life now felt unfamiliar, dangerous, transformed. In that moment, I understood that my quiet life, the nights alone among books, the fragile safety of solitude was gone. Dante Romano, a stranger both powerful and enigmatic, had stepped into my life and changed everything in an instant. And though fear still lingered, I knew with a clarity that cut through the rain whatever came next would lead me into a world of secrets, danger, and connection I had never imagined. A world from which there would be no return to the quiet I once knew. Soft light from the chandeliers above glowed across the polished wooden floor, as I opened my eyes and realized I was lying in a bed so large it made my heart flutter with both awe and unease. The air carried the gentle scent of essential oils, mingling with the quiet hum of the air conditioner, a soothing contrast to the cold rain that had soaked me hours earlier. The sheets beneath me were crisp and white, the mattress so soft it seemed to cradle every curve of my body, as though I were resting on a cloud. The bedroom was not only spacious but stunningly elegant, modern in design, with carefully chosen art pieces hanging on the walls, each casting delicate shadows in the morning light. A wide window opened toward Lake Michigan, where sunlight shimmered across the rippling surface, flooding the room with a silvery glow that made me forget, for a moment, the terror of the night before. I sat up slowly, my body still trembling from the panic and shock, my mind struggling to assemble the fragments of what had happened. And there he was, Dante Romano, standing a few steps away, tall and composed, his simple clothes somehow amplifying the quiet authority he carried. His gaze met mine, steady and observant, not demanding or invasive, just watchful, as though reading every flicker of movement I made. When he spoke, his voice was low and certain, yet gentle enough to disarm the tension still clinging to me. "You're awake, Hannah," he said. "I know you were afraid, but you're safe now." I looked around, taking in the details of the room, the leather armchairs, the carefully arranged furnishings, the subtle order that revealed both wealth and control. It was clear that nothing in this place existed by accident. My eyes drifted back to the window, to the reflection of sunlight dancing on the lake, and I felt a strange mix of relief and disbelief, realizing I was in a world far removed from the small, cold apartment and the desolate streets I had left behind. Dante stepped closer, his tone calm but earnest. "I brought you here to make sure you were safe," he said. "I have no intention of frightening you or taking control. I just want you to know you're not alone." His words, though measured, carried warmth and gravity. Something in the way he spoke made me believe him, even as uncertainty knotted in my chest. I rose to my feet, my bare toes sinking into the soft carpet as I walked slowly around the room, tracing the edges of furniture, the art, the perfect symmetry of the space. Everything reflected him, his precision, his discipline, his authority. I turned to him and whispered, my voice unsteady. Why did you help me?" He tilted his head slightly, his gray eyes holding mine, with that same calm intensity that both steadied and unsettled me. "Because last night you were in danger," he said, his voice low but firm, "and I couldn't just stand there. Someone was watching you. Hannah, if I hadn't intervened, things could have gone much worse." His words sank into me like cold water. I felt my heart tighten as the truth settled. What happened last night wasn't coincidence. Someone had targeted me, and Dante had stepped in, a silent barrier between me and whatever threat was closing in. I walked toward the window again, staring down at the garden below, its every path and hedge meticulously kept, a living reflection of the man standing beside me, controlled, deliberate, powerful. I realized then that Dante wasn't just wealthy. He commanded everything around him with precision that was both admirable and unnerving. He stood quietly next to me, close but not intrusive, the air between us charged with a tension I couldn't name. For the first time since leaving my family after my mother's death, I felt both protected and vulnerable, as if trusting him was inevitable, no matter how tangled my thoughts still were. The rain outside had stopped, but its damp chill still clung faintly to my coat. Inside, the air was warm and still, yet filled with something I couldn't shake, a mixture of safety, mystery, and quiet power that surrounded Dante like a shadow. And I knew, as surely as the morning light breaking over the lake, that nothing in my life would ever be the same again. Dante Romano, the man whose calm could silence fear, now stood at the center of my world, an enigma of protection and danger, and with him began a chapter I had never imagined, one from which there would be no return to the quiet solitude of my old life among the shelves. I sat in the soft armchair of the vast living room, my eyes tracing every detail, the gleaming wooden panels along the walls, the intricate lamps casting pools of golden light, the quiet elegance that seemed to hum with both beauty and unease. The sense of awe and tension lingered in my chest, pulsing with every measured breath. Dante stood a few paces away, his gaze steady, his voice low and deliberate, carrying a quiet power that filled the room. "The men who followed you last night," he said, "weren't vagrants or petty criminals. They were hired to watch you, to record your movements, your habits, your connections." His words sank slowly, like cold water spreading through my veins. Fear and confusion tangled together as I realized that what had happened the night before wasn't a random danger. It was a calculated plan. Dante stepped closer, his tone still calm but firm. "I've been watching over you for some time, quietly protecting you and stepping in when necessary. My appearance last night wasn't a coincidence. It was part of a system that's been in place for months." He blinked, trying to process what he was saying, my heart pounding as flashes of memory returned the dark streets, the shadows following me, the sound of footsteps closing in. "Et continued. Every time you went out alone, every call you made, every interaction, it was logged. The goal wasn't control. It was safety, to ensure that if something went wrong, I'd know, and last night proved exactly why that system exists." A chill ran through me as the reality unfolded. I had been watched, protected, monitored without my knowledge. My life had been shadowed by his unseen presence, every detail within reach of his control. "I don't do this to invade your life," he said, his voice steady but warmer now. "I do it to keep you safe. When you were in danger, I activated a recovery protocol immediately. There was no time to hesitate." His words, though calm, carried a force that made me feel both secure and deeply unsettled. I sat motionless, staring at him, torn between trust and fear, realizing that the quiet solitude I once cherished had never truly been mine. Dante's eyes, those gray, storm-filled eyes, fixed on me again. "This isn't simple protection," he went on, They track every variable around you to ensure that no threat can reach you. Every face that passes you on the street, every small event you might overlook, it all gets recorded. I exhaled slowly, feeling a strange mix of relief and dread as it sank in my every movement had been captured, analyzed, stored, all without my awareness. Dante walked to the table, lifted a slim folder, and placed it before me. This system was designed to operate in silence, he said, his gaze unwavering. You were never supposed to know, unless something went wrong. The reason I reached you the moment you fell last night wasn't luck, it was precision. Every movement, every contingency had already been accounted for. My heart began to steady, but my hands still trembled. The scale of his power was overwhelming, far beyond anything I had imagined. You may feel violated, he continued, his tone softening but still resolute. But everything I've done was to keep you safe, even when you didn't know, and even when you wouldn't have agreed. His honesty was disarming. His calm, both comforting and terrifying. I sat in silence, staring at the folder before me, understanding that my old life, the one built on anonymity and small certainties, was gone. The world Dante inhabited had swallowed mine whole. It was a world of vigilance and control, where protection and power were intertwined so tightly that one could no longer exist without the other. His quiet presence filled the room, a man who commanded not through fear, but through inevitability. And as I looked at him, this enigmatic stranger who had turned my life inside out, I realized that from this moment on, every step, every choice, every heartbeat would exist within the sphere of his watchful control. The ordinary peace I once knew had ended, giving way to a new reality, one where safety came wrapped in secrecy, and where the man who saved me held the keys to a world I had never chosen, but could no longer escape. I remained seated in the soft armchair, my eyes fixed on Dante as he stepped closer. His voice, deep and steady, carried an unexpected gentleness when he spoke. Hannah, I need you to understand my protection of you didn't begin last night. It started a long time ago, back when your mother was still alive. He blinked, my breath catching, a wave of confusion and disbelief rushing through me as my heart stumbled in its rhythm. Dante placed a hand on the edge of the table, his tone calm and deliberate. When your mother was fighting cancer, when the medical bills grew beyond what your family could bear, I made sure she received the best care, money, and influence could provide. Every expense from medication to experimental therapies was covered quietly, so that neither of you had to worry. My chest tightened, tears welling in my eyes as his words settled. I had spent so many nights praying for help during those final months, never imagining that someone this man had been answering those prayers from the shadows. My voice trembled when I finally managed to ask, You did all of that without me ever knowing?" Dante nodded, the storm gray of his eyes softening with something that looked like warmth. "Yes, I didn't want you to feel indebted or burdened. My only goal was to protect her, and later, to protect you." I looked down at my hands, feeling a dizzying mix of gratitude and disbelief. Every notion I had about safety, about care, about the quiet endurance of those years had just shifted. It continued, his voice deep but unwavering. "I monitored your mother's condition, every stage of her treatment, every critical decision. I made sure no one could interfere or exploit her vulnerability during that time." My body trembled as the truth took hold. All those moments I'd spent feeling helpless as a child watching my mother fade, he had been there, unseen, guarding her with a devotion I couldn't begin to understand. Dante sat across from me now, his gaze steady, searching, as though he could read the confusion behind my silence. "I know you've faced more loss than most people ever should," he said quietly. "Your father's absence, your mother's death, those left marks that don't fade easily. I wanted to make sure no further pain came to you that wasn't part of life itself. When your mother's condition worsened, I ensured she had everything she needed. And when the danger shifted to you, I continued to watch, to protect." My tears finally broke free, sliding down my cheeks in a rush of gratitude, fear, and something deeper I couldn't name. The realization that my life, what I'd thought of as lonely and untouched, had been quietly guarded all this time, filled me with an ache that was both comfort and unease. I lifted my gaze to him, my voice trembling. So all of this, the rescue last night, the system, everything it's connected to my mother, to protecting my family. Dante nodded slightly, his eyes still sharp but threaded with gentleness. Yes, I made her a promise that if anything ever threatened your life or your safety, I would be there, no matter the cost or the risk. My heart constricted at his words, heavy with emotion. A promise. That was what all of this had been, the quiet interventions, the unseen care, the presence I never knew existed. He had been honoring her memory through me. I sat in silence, the weight of revelation pressing on every breath, feeling both overwhelmed and deeply moved. In that moment, I realized that Dante wasn't just the man who had saved me from danger. He was the invisible force that had stood behind some of the most defining moments of my life, protecting my mother, protecting me, without ever asking for recognition. And as I sat there in the quiet glow of that grand room, surrounded by the air of power and precision that seemed to follow him everywhere, I felt something new take shape inside me, a fragile yet profound trust, an invisible thread connecting us. I knew then that whatever lay ahead, whatever choices, dangers, or emotions waited beyond this moment, Dante would no longer just be a figure at the edge of my life. He would be at the center of it, shaping not only my safety, but my future, my heart, and the path I was no longer walking alone. I sat curled in the armchair, my arms wrapped tightly around my knees, as if holding myself together could somehow steady the storm inside me. My eyes stayed fixed on Dante, and though my heart swelled with gratitude for saving me, for protecting my mother, for shielding me from dangers I had never even seen, there was also a sharp ache beneath it, a restless anger that made my chest burn. I wanted to thank him, and at the same time, I wanted to shout. My voice came out rough and trembling as I asked, Why did you do all of this without telling me? Why didn't you let me decide for myself?" Dante met my gaze, his storm-gray eyes steady, yet unexpectedly gentle. His tone was low and unwavering, because if you had known, you would have worried, acted emotionally, and that could have put both you and your mother in danger. I did what I had to do to keep you safe, not to control you. Worrying would not have changed the outcome. It would only have made it harder for you. His calmness only deepened the turmoil inside me. I wanted to understand, but part of me wanted to fight back. Never in my life had I felt so protected and yet so exposed, so safe and yet so powerless. My pulse raced, the tightness in my chest making it hard to breathe. Torn between gratitude and resentment, I stood and began to pace the room, the silence between us heavy. I had been saved. Yes, but I had also been stripped of choice. The realization left me trembling, overwhelmed by a strange mix of anger and awe. I turned toward him, my voice shaking but firm. "I am grateful," I said, "but I'm also angry. I feel watched, controlled, like I don't even know whether I can trust my own instincts anymore." Dante didn't speak right away. He simply stood there, eyes never leaving mine, reading every flicker of emotion, every unsteady breath, until I realized he understood exactly what I was feeling: the confusion, the anger, the fragile gratitude tangled together. I took a deep breath, but my body wouldn't stop shaking. The room felt too still, too intimate. Fear, confusion, grief, they all crowded in at once, pressing down on my chest until I thought I might break. Dante finally stepped closer, his voice low, carrying no command, only quiet certainty. "I understand. Hannah, I never wanted to make you feel violated or angry, but in the moments that matter, your safety, your life comes first. Everything I've done was for that." His words were simple, but they struck deep. I looked at him, realizing my anger wasn't born from his indifference, but from the way his care had crossed the invisible line between protection and possession. It was too much, too careful, too absolute. I sank back into the chair, burying my face in my hands, trying to slow my breathing. Gratitude, resentment, relief, fear, they all lived inside me at once. Impossible to separate. My thoughts drifted to my mother, to those long months of sickness, the quiet suffering I had endured beside her, believing I had faced it alone. Now I understood that Dante had been there too, silently taking on burdens I never knew existed. The thought humbled me and broke me in equal measure. I lifted my head and looked toward the wide window, where the pale morning light spilled into the room. It glowed softly across the walls, but did nothing to ease the chaos inside me. Gratitude and anger coexisted. Trust and doubt twisted together until I could no longer tell them apart. I knew then that nothing between Dante and me would ever be simple again. He was both safety and danger, protector and enigma. And as I sat there, breathing through the confusion, I realized that from this moment on, my life would be shaped not only by the security he offered, but by the unease. It brought the uneasy truth that sometimes being protected meant surrendering parts of yourself you never meant to give away. I sat silently in the armchair, my heart still tangled in the aftermath of Dante's revelations about his silent protection, when the door to the living room creaked open and Maya stepped in. She looked exhausted. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her clothes wrinkled, her hands trembling as she clutched a thick folder against her chest. The moment she saw me, she froze, caught somewhere between wanting to cry and trying to explain. "Hannah," her voice quivered. I have to tell you something. But please, you have to understand, I never wanted. I said nothing. My heart seemed to stop, an instinct whispering that whatever she was about to say would change everything. Maya drew a long, shaky breath. "My family, we owe a lot of money. A lot. And the Costa family, they forced me to give them information about you and about Dante. They said if I refused, something terrible would happen to my mother, to my family." My stomach dropped. Shock and anger collided in my chest, the blood rushing to my face as the words sank in. My best friend, the person I had trusted for 10 years, had been forced to betray me. Maya lowered her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "They told me it was harmless, just details. Your habits, your schedule, but I knew they were using everything I said to watch you and Dante. I wanted to stop. Hannah, I swear I did. But they left me no choice." The room spun around me. Every memory of her, every conversation, every moment of friendship suddenly shifted in meaning, recast in the cold light of manipulation. My throat tightened. I could barely breathe. Rage and heartbreak mixed, until I didn't know where one ended and the other began. "They used you," I whispered, my voice shaking. "They used us." Maya nodded through her tears. "I didn't want to hurt you. You're my best friend. But they threatened my family. I had no choice." Her words struck deep sincera. Desperate. And still unforgivable. I knew she was a victim. But that didn't erase the damage. I forced myself to stay calm, though my hands trembled. 10 years. I said quietly. For 10 years. I trusted you. Every word. Every laugh. Every memory, and now all of it has been turned into data. Something they could use against me. Against Dante. My voice cracked, but I didn't look away. Maya cried harder, her shoulders shaking. "I know," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I thought I was protecting my family. I never wanted to betray you." I sat there, torn between compassion and fury, realizing that even if she had acted out of fear, betrayal left wounds that no apology could heal. I drew in a long breath, trying not to shout, trying to think. Panic wouldn't help, not now. The Costa family's reach was deeper than I had imagined. And if Maya had been coerced, then Dante and I were already caught in something far more dangerous than I understood. "They wanted me close to Dante," she continued, voice breaking. "They said they needed details about his security systems, his habits, the people he trusted. I sent them reports. Small ones. But I know they were using them to plan something." My body went cold. Every part of my life, every step, every conversation had been under watch. not just by Dante's protection, but by those who wished to destroy it. Maya's betrayal, though unwilling, had opened the door. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay composed. Maya, I said, my voice unsteady but firm. I understand they left you no choice. But from this moment on, everything we say, everything we do, has to be calculated. We can't afford another mistake. I can't afford blind trust anymore. She nodded through her tears, her face a picture of guilt and despair. And in that instant, I knew something had ended, something pure, unguarded, irretrievable. The innocence of our friendship was gone, replaced by a fragile truce built on necessity and fear. As she wept, I looked past her toward the rain-dimmed window, the weight of reality settling heavy on my chest. The Costa family had made sure there was no room left in our world for simple trust. From now on, I would have to move carefully, think like Dante strategically, silently, because love, loyalty, even friendship could be used as weapons. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the ache of betrayal, I understood that this was only the beginning of a much darker game. After Maya left, I stayed seated in the armchair, motionless, the weight of exhaustion and tension pressing hard against my chest. My mind spun with everything I had just heard. Betrayal, whether born of fear or coercion, still cut deep. But I knew that anger alone wouldn't help me now. I needed clarity. I closed my eyes and drew in a long breath, forcing myself to gather the scattered fragments of emotion, fear, rage, disappointment, even gratitude, and set them aside, if only for a moment. To think clearly, Dante stood near the window, the pale light of morning spilling across his face, sharpening the edges of his expression. His voice was low, steady, carrying that quiet authority that left no room for doubt. "Hannah," he said, "you have to understand every move you make from now on, every decision, is being watched by people with dangerous intentions. The Costa family isn't just after information anymore. They're preparing to act if they see the slightest opportunity." I opened my eyes, meeting his gaze, my heart tightening with a mix of fear and realization. The danger was no longer abstract, no longer two strangers in the dark or threats whispered in alleyways. It was organized, deliberate, and closing in. I felt the last traces of my old life slipping away, the quiet hours in the library, the peaceful walks home, the illusion of safety. All of it was gone. Dante took a step closer, his tone calm, but edged with warning. "I've strengthened the protection network around you," he said, "but you need to be aware of the risks yourself. Nothing you once thought of as safe remains untouched. The people you trust, even the smallest choices you make, they can all be used as pieces in a larger game. You need to start thinking like them strategically." Cautiously, my eyes wandered around the room, the gleaming marble floors, the quiet hum of wealth and security that surrounded me, and for the first time I understood that safety, in Dante's world, was not comfort. It was control, power. I felt both fear and fascination creeping in, realizing that everyone I knew, Maya, the people at work, the strangers who smiled at me on the street, could be drawn into this invisible war without even knowing it. I pressed a hand against my chest, trying to steady the rhythm of my heart, and forced my mind to focus. Fear, I realized, had to become awareness. Every step, every word, every gesture needed to be deliberate from now on. I thought of my mother, of her quiet resilience through pain, of how she had fought to keep us safe, and for the first time, I understood that her strength wasn't just endurance. It was awareness, the courage to face what terrified her. I would have to find that same courage now. I looked at Dante as he moved to sit across from me, his eyes sharp yet holding a trace of warmth. "You've seen what betrayal looks like," he said quietly. "You've seen how fear turns people into weapons. What matters now is how you respond. Keep your composure. Use your mind. Act intelligently. The more unpredictable you are, the safer you'll be." I nodded slowly, the air still heavy, but something inside me began to shift. The panic didn't disappear. But beneath it, a thread of determination began to take root. Absolute safety was an illusion, that much I now understood. The only thing I could truly control was how I responded to danger. I turned toward the window, where the morning light poured into the room, bright and unwavering. And I realized my life had already changed beyond recognition. The solitude I once sought in late nights at the library, the quiet comfort of anonymity, all of it had vanished, replaced by a world where vigilance was survival. I inhaled deeply, forcing my breath to steady, and felt the racing of my heart begin to slow. Facing the truth, I realized, wasn't just about recognizing the threats outside. It was about mastering the chaos within. I would have to learn to trust selectively, to think before every word, to move through this new life with both caution and courage, because from now on, every step I took, every action I made, would matter. The world I once knew had become a web of power, deceit, and invisible dangers, and whether I liked it or not, I was already caught in its center. After fully realizing the danger posed by the Costa family and the unintended betrayal from Maya, I understood that relying solely on Dante's protection was not enough. I needed to learn how to protect myself and manage my own emotions. Dante began training me at the estate. Each session meticulously planned to combine survival skills with techniques to control panic attacks. Mornings started with learning to recognize the early signs of a panic attack, from a racing heart and rapid breathing to dizziness and trembling. He taught me to breathe deeply and slowly, focusing on each inhale and exhale, imagining my body filling with calm energy. I had to repeat the exercise countless times until my heart and breath steadied, even when simulated stress was introduced. Next, Dante guided me through safe movement in public spaces and open areas, emphasizing the identification of potential threats, from suspicious people to vehicles and environmental hazards. I learned to anticipate and react quickly. Every step and small gesture paired with absolute focus to notice every detail around me. He also instructed me on using everyday items, keys, phone, and purse as defensive tools, maintaining safe distances, moving agilely, and staying composed at all times. Afternoons were dedicated to simulated danger scenarios. From being followed on the street to sudden attacks, I had to recognize threats, use breathing techniques to prevent panic, and choose escape routes or safe spots. Dante monitored every reaction, pointing out the smallest mistakes, emphasizing that emotional control was as important as physical coordination in dangerous situations. Each failure made my heart pound and my body tremble. But he would gently remind me, every time you fail, you learn how to survive better. There are no mistakes, only experience. Over days, I learned to integrate awareness, emotion, and movement so that even under extreme danger, I could think clearly and act effectively. Dante also taught me psychological techniques to maintain focus, visualizing myself safe, setting specific goals for each action, and keeping my mind steady when threatened. I learned to analyze my surroundings, light and shadow, sounds, pathways to identify advantageous positions for avoiding danger. He instructed me in effective emergency communication, using eye contact, gestures, and concise words to signal or warn others without drawing the attention of potential threats. Each session ended with a debrief, analyzing every detail from emotional responses to movement strategies, helping me identify weaknesses and improve gradually. I felt myself changing day by day. The helplessness I once felt during panic attacks decreased. My confidence in self-protection grew, and fear slowly gave way to situational control. Dante looked at me after a long session, his eyes both stern and warm. "Hannah, now you not only have the ability to protect yourself, but you can also think and act in situations that once terrified you. This will save your life, and perhaps the lives of others as well." A sense of pride mingled with relief washed over me. Thanks to Dante's training, I was no longer the trembling girl facing danger. I had begun to become someone capable of confronting, assessing, and responding step by step, building confidence and survival skills in a world filled with dangers I had never imagined. That night, just after leaving the estate following another long day of training. A fragile sense of confidence lingered in my chest, warm, steady, almost foreign, until the world shifted in an instant. Maya and I were walking through a deserted industrial stretch on the west side of Chicago, where warehouses and rusted train tracks carved the streets into narrow shadows, when a sleek black van cut sharply across our path. Before we could react, two men stepped out from the darkness and pulled us inside with brutal precision. Rough hands bound our wrists, a blindfold slid over my eyes, and suddenly there was nothing but darkness and the pounding of my heart. My pulse thundered against my ribs. My breath came in short, panicked bursts, but then, through the noise in my head, Dante's voice echoed from memory, calm and steady, teaching me to breathe. Inhale, hold, exhale. I forced myself to obey, pulling the air deep into my lungs, releasing it slowly, willing my mind to focus. The panic clawed at the edges of my thoughts, but I anchored myself to the rhythm of breathing, to the single goal of staying conscious and in control. Maya was crying beside me, her voice trembling through the enclosed van. "Hannah, are you okay?" I reached for her shoulder, my hands shaking, and whispered, "We'll be fine. Remember what he taught us. Stay calm." The words were as much for her as for myself. The van sped through the empty streets, the sounds of the city fading into the distance. Tires screeched against wet asphalt, and somewhere far away a siren wailed. But inside, it was just the heavy breathing of fear and the rattle of metal restraints. I focused on every vibration of the vehicle, counting the turns, memorizing the rhythm of acceleration and stops, anything that might tell me where we were going. When the van finally halted, the doors slammed open, and we were dragged out into what smelled like oil, dust, and cold concrete. The blindfold stayed on, but the flickering hum of fluorescent lights gave away our surroundings. A warehouse, abandoned yet alive with danger. I could sense the open space, hear the echo of boots on the floor, the metallic click of locks being secured. The air was thick, heavy with the smell of machinery and rust. A man's voice cut through the silence, low, sharp, commanding. "Stay calm. Any sudden move, and you'll make this worse." It wasn't a threat shouted in anger, but an order delivered by someone used to obedience. This wasn't random. These were professionals, organized, prepared. Every sound, every pause, was calculated. Maya whimpered. "Hannah, are you sure we'll be okay?" I tightened my grip on her hand, my voice trembling but firm. "Listen to me. We stay calm. We think. We wait." Every instinct screamed at me to panic. But the training kicked in. Dante's lesson replayed like a silent guide. Control your breath. Assess your environment. And wait for the smallest crack of opportunity, even fear. He'd said once, could be used as fuel, if you learn to master it instead of letting it consume you. The man spoke again, ordering someone to separate us. My body tensed. The sound of shuffling footsteps and the drag of a chair told me they were moving Maya away. My heartbeat quickened, but I forced my breathing to steady again, recognizing that this was a moment to observe, not react. The direction of his voice, the footsteps, the faint clatter of metal, all of it became data, something to store for later. The more I knew, the less power they had over me. I could feel Maya trembling nearby, and even as fear gripped me, something inside shifted. Leadership, born of necessity, rose where panic once lived. She needs me calm. I reminded myself, if I fall apart, we both lose. I drew in another slow breath, listening for every detail, the scrape of a chair leg, the hum of the fluorescent bulbs, the way sound bounced off the walls. Each clue painted a mental map of the space. When the blindfold slipped slightly, just enough for a sliver of light to cut through, I caught a glimpse of a steel beam above, the shadow of a door, the edge of a rusted container. My training whispered to me, mark exits, find tools, plan reactions. Fear no longer ruled me. It sharpened me. I could feel it changing shape. No longer an enemy, but a companion, urging me to act carefully. In the flickering half-light of that warehouse, surrounded by men whose faces I couldn't yet see, I realized something profound. Dante hadn't just taught me to survive, he had taught me to think. The panic attacks that once crippled me were now something I could wield. A current of energy that I could direct instead of drown in. My wrists burned from the ropes. My legs trembled. And yet, deep within, a new certainty settled. Whatever this was, whatever the Costa family wanted, I would face it. I would protect Maya. I would wait. Watch. And when the moment came, I would act, not as the frightened woman I once was, but as someone who had learned that fear, when controlled, could be the sharpest weapon of all. In the freezing tension of that warehouse, I forced every sense to stay awake, ears tuned to footsteps and breathing, eyes straining to catch flickers of light through the blindfold, mind clinging to every fragment of Dante's lessons. Observe the environment. Control your breath. Stay lucid. I began to analyze, mapping the space in my head, the distance between the guards, the placement of crates and tools, the rhythm of movement. Maya's eyes, wide and frightened, found mine. I whispered for her to breathe slowly, the way we'd practiced, to anchor herself in each inhale and exhale, and take in the world quietly instead of drowning in panic. I watched the guard pacing, noticed the slight hesitation each time he turned his back to check his radio. Timing was everything. I mouthed instructions to Maya, guiding her through the smallest coordinated movements, subtle shifts of posture, testing the ropes, syncing our breathing. She followed, trembling but determined, and I felt something shift between us, fear transforming into shared focus. I traced my wrists against the cords, recalling Dante's quick-release technique, tightening and twisting just enough to prepare the break without drawing attention. All the while, I imagined the invisible perimeter of safety the rescue team Dante had stationed somewhere nearby. Watching, waiting for my signal. I couldn't risk exposing them. Every movement had to look accidental, every glance meaningless. The plan Dante drilled into me replayed in my head like choreography. Breathe. Assess. Act only when certainty outweighs fear. When the guard stepped away again, I counted silently, tracking his footsteps. 3 seconds of shadow as the flickering light overhead sputtered. That was my window. I nudged Maya, and together we slipped our wrists free, the ropes falling silently into our laps. The darkness was an ally now, broken only by the faint strobe of the failing fluorescent lamp. I could hear the guards muttering near the far end of the warehouse, their voices bouncing against the steel walls. We moved in the gaps between sound, low and measured. Every step, a calculated act of survival. I drew in a steadying breath, tapping the small transmitter hidden in my pocket, a silent signal to Dante's team. The confirmation came as a faint vibration against my hand. They were in position. The air grew taut, thick with anticipation. I turned to Maya, whispering, one breath at a time. When I say go, we move. She nodded, her fear now tempered by trust. The next few seconds stretched into eternity. Then, from outside, a crash shattered the silence, a tactical diversion. I pulled Maya toward the exit, keeping low, each step guided by instinct and training. My heart pounded, but my breathing stayed controlled. The panic reduced to a pulse of raw focus. The rescue team moved in swiftly, shadows within shadows, and I realized the precision of Dante's world. Every plan had a rhythm, every risk, a counterbalance. By the time the chaos subsided, Maya and I were outside, gasping in the cold night air. My hands still trembled, not from fear, but from adrenaline and the overwhelming clarity of what had just happened. Every drill, every lesson, every controlled breath had led to this moment. Dante hadn't just prepared me to survive, he had taught me to command myself in the face of danger. And as I looked back at the warehouse, now flooded with light and motion, I understood that this was only the beginning, that survival was no longer about escaping fear, but mastering it, As Dante's rescue team began to move, the tension in the cold warehouse thickened. Each step and every sound carefully measured. Marco and the others emerged from strategic positions, using shadows and obstacles for cover, the flickering fluorescent lights casting their figures almost invisible to the guards. Maya and I, newly freed, were guided along pre-planned markers, each step deliberate yet fluid, our eyes scanning constantly, ears straining to catch the slightest irregular sound. When a guard approached, Marco sprang from the shadows with astonishing agility, subduing him efficiently without putting us at risk. The coordination between us and the rescue team revealed how meticulously everything had been planned, each action accounted for, every possible response anticipated. I remained calm, applying the breathing techniques Dante had drilled into me, quietly reminding Maya to do the same. The panic attacks that had once paralyzed me were now tools, sharpening focus and clarity. As we moved toward the exit, Dante appeared, strong and fluid, his sharp gaze sweeping the warehouse, every motion exuding authority and control. He signaled Marco and the team to hold their positions, each second stretched to maximize safety, ensuring we could escape without alerting the remaining threats. My heart pounded, but my breathing stayed rhythmic thanks to Dante's methods. My muscles coiled and stretched in readiness to move swiftly when the moment arrived. As we navigated obstacles, the rescue team appeared at key points, neutralizing the remaining guards with precision. Maya mirrored my movements, both of us moving in synchrony, each action almost automatic from previous training, yet fully effective. Finally, as the outer door came into view, Dante led, maintaining a safe distance from the remaining threats, guiding us out. The fresh air outside hit me, and for the first time in hours, I breathed fully, feeling the power of controlling oneself under extreme pressure. Marco quickly surveyed the area, confirming there was no immediate danger, and reported to Dante that everyone Maya and I was safe and unharmed. Dante stepped closer, his gaze both stern and reassuring. "Everyone okay?" he asked. My voice trembled, yet held determination. "We're okay. Thank you." Maya exhaled shakily, tears still streaking her face. But in her eyes was the glimmer of relief. I realized that through survival skills, panic attack control, and coordination with the team, we had overcome a seemingly inescapable situation. Dante looked at me, his voice deep and firm. "What you just experienced was a test, and you've proven your ability to react, maintain composure, and harness inner strength." Confidence surged within me, and the initial fear transformed into awareness. Panic attacks were no longer enemies, but tools to maintain clarity and control in life-threatening scenarios. As we stepped out of the warehouse, morning light began filtering through dusty windows and corrugated roofs, and every step felt like a declaration of the newfound power within me. Dante and Marco checked once more, confirming the area was clear, and guided us to a secure vehicle. On the way back to the estate, I glanced at Maya and saw the change in her. The worry had subsided, replaced by determination and a sense of self-reliance. I exhaled, exhausted yet strengthened, realizing that surviving this kidnapping had taught me to apply training, manage emotions, and coordinate with allies, and that the skills Dante had taught were now inseparable from my ability to protect myself and others. When we arrived at the estate, Dante looked at me, his eyes filled with authority, yet trust. I understood then that facing danger was no longer an invisible fear but a challenge I was prepared to confront, a turning point transforming me from the girl who once trembled under panic attacks into someone capable of surviving, fighting, and protecting those I loved in a world filled with peril. After returning safely to the estate, I sank into the armchair, exhaustion spreading through me like a heavy warmth. But not the kind of weariness that drains it, was the fullness of accomplishment. My eyes fell to my hands, still marked by the faint cuts from the ropes, and I realized I had just survived a trial I once believed impossible, recalling every moment in the warehouse, each careful step, each controlled breath to manage my panic attack. I felt a profound shift within myself. Fear no longer dictated every reaction. Instead, clarity, awareness, analysis, and timely action had taken its place. I understood that Dante's lessons were not merely survival tools for that moment. They were proof of an inner strength I had never recognized. Maya sat beside me, still trembling, yet her eyes were steadier now, and I realized my calm had become a pillar, lending her energy and courage. The sense of responsibility, leadership, and self-mastery became palpable, and I felt myself maturing, not just physically but mentally. I remembered nights not long ago, when I would be consumed by panic and worry at the mere hint of a panic attack. And now, thanks to training and experience, I had transformed fear into power, learning to control it rather than be ruled by it. I reminded myself that growth does not come from words or theory, but from confronting challenges directly, enduring pressure, and maintaining rational thought to make correct decisions. I felt my body steady, no longer trembling in helplessness. My heartbeat was regular, my breathing calm, my mind alert, and every sense poised to respond to any danger. Looking around the estate, meticulously prepared by Dante to ensure our safety, I understood that I had entered a new stage of life, one where maturity came with awareness of personal power and responsibility toward others. I realized that surviving a dangerous scenario had not only preserved my life, but had unlocked the ability to control it, to stand firm when the world around me descended into chaos. I recalled every breathing exercise, every drill, every reminder from Dante. Every time you fail, you learn to survive better. And I now comprehended its full meaning. I was no longer the weak, trembling girl who once froze before danger and panic attacks. I had become someone capable of analyzing, deciding, and acting under extreme pressure. Confidence, coupled with practical experience, gave me the strength to face any challenge not only for myself but to protect those around me. Like Maya, those I loved and felt responsible for, I understood that this strength was not measured in muscles or weapons but in intellect, emotional control, and the capacity to respond in life-threatening situations. A sense of maturity and power radiated through me, and I felt able to stand resilient against life's storms. From immediate threats to emotional challenges, I reminded myself that from this moment forward, whatever situations arose, I would have the ability to observe, analyze, and act with absolute clarity. Thanks to the experiences I had lived through in Dante's training, every peaceful moment now felt precious. I gazed out the window, watching the morning light spill across the city, and realized that maturity was not the absence of fear, but the ability to survive, remain calm, and act correctly, even when fear surged. I drew a deep, steadying breath, feeling the inner strength, resilience, and newfound maturity coursing through me, knowing that from this moment on, I was no longer the girl easily swayed by fear, but a woman capable of standing firm, strong, and ready to face every challenge life might bring. After days of relentless tension and danger, something between Dante and me began to shift quietly at first, then unmistakably, with the kind of force that doesn't demand attention but changes everything it touches. The safety he provided was no longer just physical. It became an emotional refuge, a space where trust could finally take root after years of disappointment and scars left by people who had promised to care but never stayed. During training, our hours together transformed from structured drills into moments of understanding. Each exercise became a silent conversation, strength meeting, resilience, discipline blending with empathy. I found myself relying not only on his skill and strategy, but on the calm certainty in his voice, the patience in his eyes, the way he always seemed to sense my limits and guide me beyond them without force, only assurance. Every glance, every word, every small act began to weave a quiet bond between us. I no longer felt alone in this unpredictable world. I had someone I could trust completely, someone whose presence carried both safety and truth. Our connection grew beyond tactics and survival. It became an exchange of fears, hopes, and unspoken vulnerabilities. I began to see that love, or whatever this fragile, deepening closeness did not ignite in an instant. It was built in layers. Through shared experiences and wordless understanding, Dante never rushed me. He listened, not always with words, but with stillness, with that kind of attention that makes you feel seen without judgment. We started to share ordinary yet meaningful moments evenings on the rooftop terrace, watching the city lights flicker like restless stars, soft laughter after hours of intense training, late-night talks about life, purpose, and the things that quietly define us. His presence filled the silence with warmth, not the kind that burns, but the kind that steadies, a warmth that made me believe I could lean on him without fear of being abandoned or misunderstood. And in me, I think he found something too, not a fragile woman needing protection, but an ally capable of standing beside him. Someone strong, perceptive, and unafraid to share the weight of responsibility. What grew between us felt balanced, rooted in respect, mutual trust, and the kind of understanding that can only come from facing danger together. Even as threats lingered beyond the estate walls, peace began to exist in the small moments between us. I realized that safety wasn't just the absence of fear, it was the presence of someone who shared it with you. We learned to read each other's signals, to coordinate not just through words but through intuition, creating a rhythm of cooperation that extended beyond survival into something far more human. From the chaos we had endured, from the fear and panic attacks that once crippled me, we built something unbreakable. Our relationship was not defined by the drama of rescue or the fire of passion, but by steady faith, love expressed through consistency, understanding, and the courage to depend on one another. As the nights passed, I began to feel a subtle warmth each time he was near, a quiet resonance in my chest when he spoke. Every look, every half smile, every calm directive carried an undercurrent of care deeper than words. And I knew then that the bond between us had evolved into something real, mature, grounded, and alive. A partnership strong enough not only to endure the dangers ahead, but to make every challenge worth facing. Together, 14 months later, I stood at the large window of our spacious River North apartment, gazing down at the bustling city streets beneath the towering skyscrapers and the glimmering expanse of Lake Michigan in the morning light, feeling the rhythm of a city that had become, in every sense, my true home. Life for Dante and me had transformed completely from the tense, fearful months of the past. We were not merely safe, but had built a shared space where love, trust, and mutual responsibility formed the foundation. Over the past months, we had devoted ourselves to community projects, from youth education programs on the South Side to supporting libraries and cultural centers, leveraging Dante's organizational skills, resources, and experience to create meaningful change in the neighborhoods we called home. I found myself actively engaged, applying management and coordination skills along with the techniques for handling stress and controlling panic attacks that Dante had taught me, ensuring each initiative ran smoothly, safely, and with tangible benefit for everyone involved. Our small family was also taking shape, not just Dante and me, but the bonds we shared with those around us. Like Marco and his sister, loyal companions through every challenge. Each morning, waking beside Dante, feeling the rhythm of his breath, I sensed a security I had never dared to imagine. His presence offered not only protection but also the space to grow, to engage in meaningful work, and to balance personal and shared responsibilities. The apartment itself served as a hub for these community projects, every room thoughtfully arranged to host teens, volunteers, and collaborators. I gradually learned to lead, organize, and inspire participants, seeing the tangible impact of our efforts on the lives of others. Dante watched me with pride tempered by gentleness, always ready to support, yet allowing me autonomy, respecting my capability and maturity. This balance strengthened our relationship, founded on trust, cooperation, and genuine affection rather than dependence or absolute protection. Evenings became moments of collaboration, watching the city lights dance across the lake, planning upcoming projects, exchanging ideas for improvements and innovative approaches. feeling the excitement of seeing immediate results from our work. I also took time for self-care, physical training, and stress management, applying the breathing and panic control techniques that had once saved my life, now helping me remain calm and focused in every critical decision. Maya's family and those we had helped gradually integrated into the community, creating a sense of wholeness and purpose. I realized that safety, love, and the ability to positively influence others were not distant ideals, but the result of our hard-earned experiences and relentless effort. As I looked out over the city, I recognized my own growth from the girl who once trembled at panic attacks and fled from danger, to a confident, strong woman capable of leadership, making a difference, and protecting those she loved. Dante stepped up, placing his hand on my shoulder, his gaze full of love and understanding. We shared a quiet, meaningful moment, aware that from past challenges, dangers, and fear, we had built a new life filled with hope, security, and fulfillment. Our apartment, community, family, and purposeful projects became a testament to my maturity, inner strength, and ability to create a positive impact. Each day I woke with gratitude, pride, and happiness for what we had endured, understanding that the fear that once overwhelmed me was now a memory reminding me of the value of courage, love, and responsibility. I looked down at my belly, feeling my daughter move, and a sense of completeness and joy spread through me. Knowing the next generation would grow up in safety, love, and opportunity, I realized that every effort, every past challenge, had been worth it. For now I was not merely living, but creating a meaningful, fulfilling future for myself and those around me. After settling into life in River North and building a family with Dante, I began focusing on charitable and community projects that had previously existed only as ideas on paper. My experience managing panic attacks and controlling my emotions under extreme pressure had become an invaluable tool, allowing me to actively participate in educational programs and provide psychological support for both adolescents and adults facing difficulties. I organized workshops on stress management, deep breathing, and emotional awareness, applying techniques Dante had taught me during survival training, now adapted to help individuals prone to anxiety, panic attacks, or daily psychological stress. The programs I led expanded from the South Side to community centers in the North Side, where I coordinated with teachers, volunteers, and mental health professionals to establish schedules, instructional materials, and practical sessions. Participants learned to apply panic control techniques to real-life stressors, from exams and job interviews to family and community pressures. I realized that my personal experiences from moments of extreme fear and helplessness in the rain had become a living inspiration for others. By sharing my story, the way I learned to manage emotions and navigate dangerous situations, many people found motivation and a sense that they were not alone in facing their own fears. Dante often observed from a distance, offering support while letting me take the lead, and this balance helped me recognize the remarkable growth of my leadership abilities. I was no longer someone who merely avoided or relied on others. I had become a person capable of guiding, supporting, and inspiring multiple people at once. In every workshop, every class, I witnessed progress, each smile, each confident glance, every small story participants shared about applying panic control techniques in their daily lives, making the positive impact of my efforts unmistakably clear. I also participated in projects in collaboration with the Romano Foundation, where Dante and I developed programs in education, vocational training, and mental health care for the community. These initiatives ensured social benefit, while giving me opportunities to apply my life experiences, stress management skills, and ability to observe and analyze complex situations in real-world settings. Every detail mattered, from teaching a young person how to breathe properly before a critical job interview to organizing group sessions, helping parents support their children in managing anxiety. Each success brought profound fulfillment, I recognized that my months of panic and helplessness had become the foundation enabling me to transform personal experience into meaningful societal impact. A sense of happiness and pride spread through me as I witnessed small but meaningful changes in others' lives. I realized that inner strength, patience, and emotional control could not only save myself, but also inspire, uplift, and empower those around me. I learned to combine personal experience, practical skills, and educational strategy to build programs with long-lasting impact while maintaining connection and trust within the community, fostering autonomy in participants. Looking back on the journey from panic attacks on the streets, helplessness in the rain, and the feeling of being threatened, I understood that all those challenges had prepared me with the leadership, social sensitivity, and mental resilience necessary to turn fear into a tool for change, allowing me not only to grow personally but also to create positive, far-reaching impact, helping vulnerable individuals find hope and strength while contributing to the building of a stronger, more resilient community. Now, standing at the window of my River North apartment, feeling the city's vibrant pulse beneath the towering buildings and glimmering stretch of Lake Michigan, I cradled my growing belly, aware of the tiny life within a living testament to the turbulent journey and growth I had endured. Looking back from the timid library girl, terrified of panic attacks and the dangers lurking on the streets, to the confident, strong woman who now controls her emotions and positively impacts her community, I realized that every hardship, every challenge, every fleeting moment of panic had shaped me into the person I had become. I learned that maturity does not come solely from facing physical danger, but from overcoming inner fears, learning to trust, to cooperate, to love wisely, to build relationships rooted in trust and respect, and most importantly, to transform personal experiences into inspiration and support for others. Through managing panic attacks and learning to regulate emotions under stress, I had turned what was once a weakness into a tool to help the community, teaching others to face pressure with confidence and resilience. This journey also showed me that safety, love, independence, and social responsibility are intertwined, and that sometimes help from seemingly distant friends or from powerful figures like Dante offers the opportunity to grow, accept guidance, and connect more deeply with life itself. I want to tell you that every challenge, every fear we encounter can become a lesson, if we choose to see it as an opportunity to mature, to love, to help those around us, and to create the positive impact that life always needs. If this story touches your heart, please like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, Underworld Love Stories, and share this video to hear more captivating stories every day. We truly want to know how this story resonates with you, whether you have experienced fears or challenges similar to those described here. Please share your thoughts from the depths of your heart so we can listen and connect with your true emotions. Goodbye, and we will see you in the next video. Wishing everyone watching good health, joyful lives, daily peace and happiness. Until we meet again in the upcoming stories on the channel.